A little example, and I think this was Gary Smalley taught me this in one of his videos. He was talking about how because women's energy and spirits are so much more sensitive, men don't realize that what they think is dropping a pebble can feel like dropping a brick or a boulder.
Oh yeah, because my husband had no idea.
Perfect. So
that's why I was upset.
Perfect. So, baby girl, if you're open to this, I would suggest you have a conversation with him where you say, could we have a conversation about a pattern in our conversations that I think is putting a wedge between us?
That sounds great, yeah.
And actually get a pebble, a brick, and a boulder. And here's the thing, as you say, you know, sometimes, husband, I don't want to use his name again, sometimes when you say things, I think you feels like this, and drop it from about waist high. Let it hit. It's just going to go thunk.
Right.
Sometimes, and you pick up the brick, it feels more like plunk, right? Drop it from your waist. And the sound and the energy will make a visual and visceral impression for him. And then if you have a big rock, and you can go, more often than not, if I'm already feeling vulnerable and you use this tone that feels accusatory, and we can talk about that separately or whatever, this is what it feels like. And when you drop that from the waist, and I'll tell you that every time I've had a man see this, they're like, no freaking way. It's the same tone. And that's perfect, because then you go, so the tone you just used was surprised. I want to honor that. But as the recipient of the energy that you just sent out, would that feel like a pebble, a brick, or a boulder? And once they get it, it has to be a heart visceral, right? It's not a head thing. It's got to be a heart thing where once they get it, now we can start making some changes, because we get to say, time out. I'm feeling like a brick is coming.
Right.
And stop before we get into the pattern. And as you know, when I work with couples, I always talk about, let's come to some agreements about how we're going to help each other catch ourselves when these things are happening. And then, of course, you can talk about tone. I remember doing this with a relative of mine. I actually had a niece that was living with me for a while, and she was just a teenager. She had so much pain. Oh, I had such compassion for her. But I was really trying to help her recognize the energy that she was bringing to a circumstance was affecting how people were responding to her and aggravating her experience, right?
Right.
So I sat with her and I said, sweetheart, you know that I love you, yes? And she kind of, well, yeah, you know, teenager, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, let me show you an example of what we're experiencing from you. If I were to sit here with you and say, oh, baby girl, I love you, what does that feel like to you? And she's like, well, it feels like love. You know, she didn't really want to be playing, but, you know, she's a teenager. And I said, so what if I said, I love you? And, of course, she jumped. And I said,
right.
It's the same words. What's wrong? And something clicked. It was like, oh my gosh. The energy of my words, the energy of my intention, I can mask any wonderful saying if I use the wrong tone. And she started shifting from there. She was living with us, remember. So that part started shifting. There was still other stuff we had to work through. I want to be honest, but just being able to have that conversation with her, if everyone could have that conversation with the person they adore, I think it would start changing some things.
Right. I think that's a fabulous idea.
So
I think that's part of my anxiety today is the guilt or the sense that what threw things off was the way I react. I mean, to him at least, the way I reacted and what I said when I said, you know,
so
back to being quiet.
Right.
And talking to me, that he didn't understand what he'd done.
Exactly.
And he was so upset.
Exactly. And then he was hurt, and see how ego, because I attacked back, which was an ego thing. You know, I talk about in relationships what I call ADD. When we're in a and I hate to use this word, but it's the truth. When we're in a hostile conversation, I attack, right? I defend myself.
Right.
And then I deny that you have the right to be offended by what I just did. Right? It's ADD.
Right, and we guys did that last night.
And
absolutely.
And guess how I learned these things? From my own experience of doing the ADD and relationships and going, you know what, that's not working. Can we try another pattern? So, okay, so let's take a breath.
I love that.
Yeah, let's take a breath and let's think about the experience last night. On a scale of 0 to 10, who didn't put her up? And let me try it again. Who didn't put her up?
3.
Okay, and so that's just hanging
I
in
don't
there.
like it, but
That's okay. That's okay.